and on the surface, Thor Ragnarok seemed like great fun, at least until you started to look a bit deeper and realised that he basically spends the whole movie playing second fiddle to strong female character and strong female antagonist, and getting his ass kicked by both.
What? Okay, so I enjoyed this movie, but now I realize there are women in strong roles, so it's bad now? Is that his argument? What the fuck argument is that?
This Organized Chaos video is brought to you by Gems Art Studio. This video is also brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello again. For today's episode, we'll be going back to Critical Drinker. I wasn't planning on returning to him so quickly, but I got a request. From Kieran Champion, please watch and react to Critical Drinker's Marvel Phase 4 Who Cares video. The thumbnail itself is very telling. Okay, so that means we have to look at this thumbnail. And so I brought up here, and Marvel's Phase 4, Who Cares, by The Critical Drinker. Almost 2 million views. It came out a year ago, and it's all women on the cover, which, if that's his angle, that's not a good start. But you know what? It's so weird. I liked his Batman review. But then, maybe that's the issue. Maybe if he does an actual review, it can be okay. A little cringe, but okay. But if he does a projection, like he looks at a trailer and guesses what the series is going to be like, it's bad then. Maybe it's that. But we're going to watch this video. We're going to find out. How cringe is it? Ooh, let's see.
The other day, I was floating face down in my local duck pond when two thoughts occurred to me. One, it's been a long time since I've seen a new Marvel movie, and two, I'm totally fine with that. But it did get me wondering what kind of generic, predictable, formulaic products of mass consumption are due to roll off the MCU assembly line in the near future. So I guess it was time to take to the internet in search of answers about Marvel Phase 4. And boy, was I not overwhelmed. First up is the much-delayed Black Widow, a movie that might have been awesome if it had come out 4 or 5 years ago when Black Widow was riding high after the success of Winter Soldier.
I agree. That movie, honestly, probably, I wouldn't even mind coming out before the first Avengers. Give, all the Avengers their solo movie. Do a Hawkeye solo movie, too. Hawkeye came after Black Widow, and even that was just a series. It wasn't a movie. Yeah, Black Widow did come way too late, and I do think one angle the movies could have done, but they really didn't, because Black Widow takes place during Civil War when everybody's a fugitive, and I would have liked if they played into that more, and maybe even do a Black Widow 2, but it takes place during the blip, and we get to see some of the aftermath of the blip after everybody's gone. That would have been interesting too, and I don't think they're going to do that. I definitely want some stories set in the blip, though.
And, still alive. As it stands, it just feels like a bizarre and unnecessary mid-quel about a dead character that nobody really cares about now. Don't get me wrong.
People still care about Black Widow. She's still popular.
Scarlett Johansson is still awesome, and she could probably make grocery shopping look entertaining, but I can't help but feel that all the wind's been taken out of this movie's sails. I also have the sneaking suspicion that this film was bumped from its original pre-Endgame slot to make way for a certain overpowered Mary Sue character that Marvel laughably thought was going to be the new face of the MCU. But we'll talk more about that one.
Oh my god. Can we let Captain Marvel go? It was mediocre. It is not the worst thing ever. Can we let it go?
On later. Next we've got Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings, a generic kung fu movie that looks like the unholy love child of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and...
A generic kung fu movie. I like how he's judging it when, according to his... he's talking about upcoming movies, so he hasn't seen these yet, and yet he's judging them already. That's the sign of a good reviewer. Judge it before you see it.
Crazy Rich Asians, which basically continues Disney's increasingly disastrous attempts to court...
Crazy Rich Asians? No, I did not get any Crazy Rich Asian vibes off Shang-Chi.
Those sweet, sweet Chinese dollars. The trailer didn't really do anything for me, and
That's true.
with no big names to speak of, I don't see it doing much when it actually comes out. Speaking of forgettable movies that no one cares about, The Eternals is apparently still a thing. Yup, that's a film which is happening. Honestly, there's been so little advertising or even talk about it online that I'd genuinely forgotten this film even existed. I mean, who wouldn't be excited about a movie centered on a group of characters that no one's ever heard of, starring a ragtag collection of has-beens and never-will-bees?
Has-beens and never-will-bees? Jesus Christ, dude, that's pretty shitty. What? Richard Madden, Selma Hayek, Brian Tyree Henry, Kunal Nanjiani, Angelina Jolie. These are all fairly decent-sized names. And the other guys I have not seen before. Who's left? Lauren Ridolph, Don Lee, Leah McHugh. Well, she's a kid. How's Cersei not on here? Cersei was the lead. Well, I've definitely heard of Gemma Chan before. But yeah, has-beens and never will be? God, that's shitty. Like, dude, you're an internet content creator and you're gonna insult actors for being has-beens and never will be? What the fuck is that? That's pretty shitty.
And directed by a woman with a grand total of one movie to her name. Wow, can't wait to sail the high seas for this one. The Marvel Spider-Man...
Okay, that doesn't tell you anything.
And movies are basically exemplify the best and worst tendencies of the MCU for me. They're solid, smartly written, and well cast, with the usual fast-paced action and light-hearted humour that Marvel basically distilled down into a science about 10 years ago. But they also feel kind of lightweight, lacking in tension and consequence, and really fail to tap into the conflict between Peter Parker and his crime-fighting alter ego. And after multiple...
I do feel like that's a good review of the Spider-Man movies. I feel like Marvel movies in general can kind of feel that way. Not always, though. I thought Doctor Strange 2 pulled it off nicely. I thought that was a really good one. No Way Home was fun. Yeah, Black Widow was a bit generic. I actually, like, I know I'm in the minority. I think between Black Widow, Shang-Chi, and Eternals, most people will go Shang-Chi as their favorite. I actually kind of like Eternals as my favorite just because it was something different. That felt different. That did not feel like an MCU thing. Granted, it does drag a bit. But it was an experiment. It was this big, bombastic, Jack Kirby style, like a modernized version of a Jack Kirby style big story. And I enjoyed it. But I know I'm in the minority on that opinion. I do have controversial takes on some comic book movies. Look up my history on Wonder Woman 84 if you want to know more. But yeah, I thought it was fine. I did feel Shang-Chi and definitely Black Widow felt a bit more conveyor belt to me. It's weird. It's one of those things where, yes, every time I hear about a new superhero movie, I get a little bit, bored. Because, honestly, I'll be frank, I'm a little bit bored with talking about superhero movies all the time. That being said, when they come out and they're good, I'll forget about my boredom. I'll forget about the fact that I'm bored with superhero movies and enjoy the movie that I'm watching. That's largely what happened when I watched Doctor Strange 2. I thought that was a really good one. Yeah. Not so much No Way Home, but Far From Home and Homecoming, I feel like fit that example he was talking about perfectly. I actually think Shang-Chi, I might prefer that to Far From Home and Homecoming, but yeah, it could feel that way too, and Black Widow definitely felt that way, unfortunately. I was really looking forward to Black Widow, and I think Black Widow has some good performances in it, but the movie itself was kind of forgettable.
Multiple reboots and restarts over the past couple of decades. I don't know, man. I feel like I'm pretty Spider-Man'd out these days. Doctor Strange was a movie that didn't quite do it for me back in the day. Maybe I was in the wrong kind of mindset at the time, and maybe those 6 beers I had beforehand didn't help. But I always had the suspicion that the film relied on its strong cast of actors and mind-bending visuals to hide the fact that the plot wasn't particularly strong or interesting. It also featured one of the most forgettable villains since that bald guy from Ant-Man, which is a
yes. Doctor Strange, the first one, has a really forgettable villain, and it's kind of shocking, because I watched it not that long ago in preparation for the new one, and I was like, oh my god, I forgot Mads Mikkelsen is in this, and oh my god, he's the main villain. How did I forget Mads Mikkelsen is in this? Because I like Mads Mikkelsen. But yeah, he does a good job, but he doesn't have much to work with. Doctor Strange, as a movie overall, I like it, but yeah, I think, like, especially looking at the comic book origin, it could have been so much better. So much better.
fucking crime considering you had Mads Mikkelsen to work with. The point
True.
is, I'm not exactly thrilled at the prospect of a sequel. Maybe I'm wrong on this one, and I'll be pleasantly surprised when the Multiverse of Madness comes around, but I can't shake the feeling that it'll be just another very expensive special effects demo. Taika Waititi gets a lot of credit for reinvigorating the floundering Thor series, injecting some much needed levity into a character that was kinda stodgy and boring. And on the surface, Thor Ragnarok seemed like great fun, at least until you started to look a bit deeper and realised that he basically spends the whole movie playing second fiddle to strong female character and
What? That was about him finding his strength. How does he does not play second fiddle to fucking Valkyrie. Oh my god.
strong female antagonist and getting his ass kicked by both.
Okay, of course the main antagonist is gonna kick his ass. What type of threat is there if there's not an antagonist that's gonna kick their butt? And Hell has always been a woman in the comic book, so of course. Valkyrie's always been a woman as well. Granted, not a black woman, but you know what? Tessa Thompson does a good job, so I don't really give a shit. And Kate Blanchett does a good job, and who cares? He's not second fiddle. It's very much a Thor movie. And like, what? Okay, so I enjoyed this movie, but now I realize there are women in strong roles, so it's bad now? Is that his argument? Because what the fuck argument is that? Be like, oh yeah, I watched it more, and actually I realized the story is kind of weak. No, his argument is, no, I've watched it more, and I realized there are women in strong roles, so it sucks. Wow. Totally sexist.
It also started the unwelcome trend of using him as the butt of everyone else's jokes. I mean, it's great that his movies don't take themselves so seriously now, but there's a pretty fine line between levity and mockery, and I think Taika doesn't really know where that line sits. I also have the sneaking suspicion that he doesn't have a whole lot of respect for the character or his mythology. The fact that Thor...
I tell you what, on Twitter he probably doesn't have a whole lot of respect for the people who freak out over shit like this and strong female characters. And guess what? Neither do I.
Love and Thunder is going to have strong female character as the new ruler of Asgard, and Jane Foster taking Thor's hammer away from him kind of suggests that he's really just there to prop up his more diverse replacements. And
well, I don't know exactly how Thor Love and Thunder will play out. The trailer looks like it's very much going to be about him, though. Jane Foster has, like, almost no role in the trailer. Which makes me... I don't know how big her role will be, how much they're hiding. It's the trailer mostly Act 1, and it's going to be mostly her movie. Because actually, I'm just reading the Jane Foster comic book now. The first issue is primarily about Thor, and then Jane Foster takes over in the second issue. Will it be something like that? I don't know. But I will say this, if it's anything like the comic book, I'm really digging that comic book series so far. I haven't gone very far into it, but I'm like where it's at right now. So if it goes that route, I'm 100% on board.
And well, that just kinda sucks for a character that's been through so much over the years. Black Panther was, in my opinion, one of the most overrated movies in the entire MCU.
Oh boy, it was overrated. You didn't like a movie that didn't star a white guy. What a shocker.
A film that pretty much everyone was too afraid to criticize, so it ended up
That movie is fucking awesome. Get a grip. Ryan Coogler's great.
getting so much wild, over-the-top praise that it actually became kind of laughable after a while. Like everyone was in some kind of competition to see who could lavish the most obscene accolades at its feet. Anyway, a sequel was as inevitable as me needing a second...
Or, it was just really good and you're kind of sexist and racist. Take your pick.
Liver transplant, but the tragic death of Chadwick Boseman left Marvel with the difficult choice of either recasting the character of T'Challa or having someone else take up the mantle of Black Panther. Neither option was preferable, but in the end they chose the second one, with the rumour being that Shuri would become the new protagonist.
Yes, and that actually fell through. It's not exactly clear why. I know on set there are reports of her being super anti-vax. I don't know if that was it, but it might just be they didn't want to deal with her. So, M'Baku, what's the name of that actor? But the guy who plays M'Baku will take up the Black Panther, last I heard. Granted, they could all change when the actual movie comes out, but according to reports, that's what it's going to be. God, what's the name of that guy? He's fairly famous. Winston Duke. Yeah, he will be taking over that role.
Fucking great. The most annoying and insufferable character in the first movie now
Oh, I thought her character was fine. Get a grip, dude. Yeah, you don't like the women characters. What a shock.
expected to hold up an entire franchise by herself.
I'm sure you did your best.
Yeah, good luck with that one, guys. You're gonna need it, trust me. Captain Marvel was one of the...
God, he is so sensitive. Woman tell little joke, and all of a sudden, oh God, how dare she? Oh, Jesus Christ, dude. So cringe.
most hilariously ridiculous movies in the entire MCU. A 2-hour feminist power fantasy for the blue-haired land whales of the world to feel vindicated as they go home to their empty cat-infested apartments, featuring a character with all the charisma of a toll booth operator, played by an actress with all the charm and likability.
Why are we talking so much about Captain Marvel? Are we about ready to talk about the Marvels?
Of my underwear after a chicken vindaloo. Marvel basically had to play every trick in the book to prop this film up, changing the functionality of online review sites to block negative opinions.
Oh, no, that's not what they did. That's not why they did it. Number one, Marvel didn't do that. Rotten Tomatoes had to do that. Why? Because people were bombing the website without actually watching the fucking movie. That's an issue. That's why fan scores you have to take with a grain of salt, because you get these fan campaigns against movies or for movies, and it'll be by people who haven't even seen the fucking movie. Guys, you're allowed to say, I'm not going to watch this movie because so-and-so said it's bad and I trust them. You're allowed to say that, but don't turn around and say it's a bad movie then. Because guess what? You have to see it to make that judgment. What do you think of the movie? It's just one of those things. You're allowed to say, hey, so-and-so said this, I trust them, I'm not going to see it. Fine. But you don't know if it's a bad movie or not because you haven't seen it. A review is not a movie. A review just is meant to give you an impression of a movie. That's it.
And conveniently releasing it right in the middle of the two biggest movies in the MCU's history, instead of releasing Black Widow, which is what they really should have done. Captain Marvel was once slated to be the new Iron Man, the face of the MCU, that everyone would associate with the brand. Then they realised that nobody fucking liked her, which was why she barely appeared in Endgame.
Yeah, her movie made over $1 billion. Why do they always forget about that? They're always like, oh, it was sandwiched between Infinity War and Endgame, which is the only reason it made $1 billion. Never mind the fact that Ant-Man and the Wasp was also sandwiched between those two and didn't make $1 billion. But yeah, let's ignore that because that's counter to our narrative, right?
And her sequel isn't due to slink out into cinemas until 2022. Honestly, I can't wait for this one because I just know that they absolutely won't learn a single lesson from the storm of controversy and backlash that erupted around the first film.
Well, here's what drives me nuts about the first film. All you people like Critical Drinker are blazing at it for the worst reasons. Oh, Brie Larson does a bad job. Brie Larson wasn't written particularly well. That's the issue. I don't think it's not that she does a particularly bad job, because she's fine in what she's in. But, I'd say one of the biggest misses is when she finds out that the Kree are actually the bad guys. There could have been a huge dramatic moment for her where she has a freak out and the Skrull have to somehow stop her from going a little mental, because she's been conditioned to think of the Kree as the good guys. She's been brainwashed to think of the Kree as the good guys, and instead when she finds out they're the bad guys, it's almost like, oh, okay. There should have been a lot more of that, and I think just a simple scene like that could have went a long way to helping out the movie. It would have given Brie a bit more acting acting. A bit more to do with her acting skills, because she very much has acting skills. Don't know that, watch Room. Not The Room, but Room. Just Room. She's amazing in that movie.
And without his big brothers, or the MCU's red-hot momentum to protect it this time around, I think it'll be very interesting to see how well The Marvels manages to stand on its own 2 feet. Ant-Man's never exactly been a heavy hitter in the MCU. I mean, his first movie was a fun but ultimately undemanding heist flick that you could enjoy at the time and then comfortably forget 5 minutes after leaving the theatre. Then, for some reason, the sequel decided to make him a background character in his own fucking movie, delivering a dull and predictable story that...
Well, he's a background character. No, he co-stars with Wasp. It's called Ant-Man and the Wasp. So they're both the stars. Yeah. I still feel like there might have been a little bit more focus on him, because you get to see a lot more of his family. You see some of her family, obviously, with Hank Pym. But yeah, it's called Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's not called Ant-Man 2.
That killed what little momentum he actually had. So you'll excuse me if I'm not exactly thrilled at the prospect of a third outing for The Wasp, featuring a possible guest appearance by Ant-Man. And of course...
Oh, boo-hoo.
There's the long-awaited Guardians of the Galaxy 3, a movie that got pushed back after James Gunn got himself into a spot of bother on Twitter. But it's funny how easy it is to bounce back from stuff like that, provided...
Yeah, got himself into a hot spot. Listen, he did old tweets from years ago, then he apologized for them, and then they hired him to do the first Guardians movie, and then Mike Cernovich dug up those old tweets, and he got fired, even though he already did his whole apology thing for it. It was obnoxious and it was dumb. And one of the things that really tells you whether or not he should be hired or not is the reaction from the people who work with him. The reaction from the people who worked with James Gunn was overwhelmingly, bring this man back. That's the thing. So I have issues with, like, Roseanne and Gina Carano getting fired, because it's like, yeah, they did really bad tweets. I don't think you should get fired just for really bad tweets, and that's technically what they were fired for. That being said, no one stood up for Gina Carano. No one at all. And in the case of Roseanne, the cast and crew were actually saying they were unwilling to work with her anymore. So, like, they were actually in a spot where they were like, we have to either get rid of Roseanne or get rid of everybody else. So, yeah, I feel that's different than James Gunn, because James Gunn, people actually stood up and said, no, you made a mistake, bring this man back. And that tells you something. Yeah.
You say the right things. Anyway, I'm sure this one will be perfectly fine. The first Guardians was an unexpected hit, proving that the right filmmaker can take even obscure third-tier characters and craft an interesting story around them. The second movie was flawed, but mostly still fun, and
God, okay, so the second movie, you gotta watch it multiple times, because every time I watch that movie, I like it more and more. The first time I watched it, thought it was kind of dull, but every time I watch it, there's more and more to that movie. That movie is so goddamn good. That might be one of my all-time favorites of the MCU. That is so good.
And provided Gunn doesn't drop the ball on this one, I'd imagine that Guardians 3 will end Phase 4 on a much-needed high note. Which is just as well, because the more I think about it, the more I realise that there really isn't a whole lot to get excited about in the next phase of the MCU. With most of the big players either dead or departed after Endgame, it really feels like they're scraping the bottom of the barrel for new characters to build the franchise around. And what they have left isn't exactly inspiring. I mean, really, is anyone out there excited to see The Eternals? Or Shang-Chi? Or a third Ant-Man movie? I've said before that Marvel used up their...
Well, I do think it's interesting. Like, you're talking about how we're not excited for these new characters. But you're forgetting, essentially, Marvel ended, the first 3 phases was their huge, like, story arc. And now they're kind of on a reboot period, like a soft reboot period. Not technically a reboot, but, like, a lot of the old characters are gone, so we have to bring up new characters. So comparing Phase 4 to Phase 3 is not honest, and it's not fair. It would be more fair to compare Phase 4 to Phase 1, where you're introducing characters like Iron Man, who, like, is known, but he's not super popular. Same with Captain America. Hulk's pretty popular. But Black Widow and Hawkeye are not really popular. What you're doing is kind of introducing these characters these style characters, maybe not as popular as those. But like Marvel has shown, especially with Guardians of the Galaxy, you can take the less popular characters and make them big box office hits. The trick is, it's not going to be the first outing. It's not. Ant-Man, the first Iron Man was a surprise hit. But the sequels, I think the sequels did better. I know Iron Man 3 did way better. But I think it's dishonest to pretend like, oh yeah, after Endgame, I'm going to be just excited for all these new characters. No. Marvel had their big Infinity War Endgame, big movie. Now we're on the come down. Essentially, hype has to die down because you can't keep the hype level really high. Hype has to come down, and then you gotta build up new characters slowly. And then when things start building up, you build up that hype again. That's the thing. You can't just keep on building and building and building. You have to build and then let down. Build and then let down. That's the best way to handle it, and that's what Marvel's doing. Phase 4, yeah, looking at the properties, not super exciting. But at the same time, I imagine your average schmo looking at like the first Thor and Captain America movie, they probably weren't excited for those either, but they got excited as they went on, as they're able to develop these characters. And that's what I'm looking forward to with Phase 4. I want to see them develop Shang-Chi and all that. But I haven't even finished this video. What else does he have to say that's stupid? Because it's all pretty stupid.
The best storylines and characters with the end of the Infinity Saga, and that realistically, there's no way they'll be able to build up something as epic as that again. And having seen what they've laid out for the next several years, there's really nothing to make me change that opinion. You may also have noticed a conspicuous focus on diversity in the Phase 4 lineup, which I guess...
Oh god, I don't care. You know what? There's been so many white men starring in Marvel movies. I'm fine with mixing it up. There's nothing wrong with mixing it up. And it does. People do appreciate and they do attach to the character better when they look like them. I know it's dumb and I know the brain shouldn't work that way, but it does. And even if it didn't, people should get these roles besides white men.
Guess was to be expected. I mean, don't get me wrong, it seems like a good idea on the surface. It certainly makes sense to have characters from different backgrounds and cultures to add a bit of variety to the series. The problem, as always, lies in the execution. Shows like WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier leaned far too heavily on identity politics, aggressive...
They did, yeah, okay, I thought Falcon and the Winter Soldier didn't really lean into it hard, but definitely leaned into it. WandaVision didn't lean into it really at all. Not any more than your average, story with a female protagonist did. Not all. Do you want to drop an example of how WandaVision really leaned into it? Because I can't remember anything where it really leans into it, other than that Wanda's the main character. Of course, that's all that counts for these videos. All that counts for it to be woke is to have a character that's not a white guy. I swear to God. And all of a sudden, oh, it's woke. Ugh.
Trying to lecture their audience about the evils of modern culture, rather than presenting a fun story with interesting ideas and allowing them to form their own opinions. And if that represents the tone and style of the MCU going forward, then all I can say is, I hope you like losing money, Marvel. The fact that their movie releases have been stalled for more than a year due to the unspecified virus of unknown origin has really hurt.
Oh my god, was he a COVID skeptic? Dude, COVID... Okay, my dad almost died from COVID, so I do not appreciate COVID skeptics at all. COVID is a very serious virus. I hope it doesn't make a comeback. I was hoping we're in the endemic phase of it. But yeah, it's a very serious virus. It can kill you. There's a decent chance if you catch it, you won't die, but there's a chance you will. I do not appreciate virus skepticism at all. Those people can go fuck themselves.
Hurt the momentum. Streaming services have exploded over the past year for obvious reasons, and a lot of movies are now getting simultaneous releases, which is a nice idea in theory, but the problem is that once a film's able to be downloaded, you can bet your arse it's going to be on the high seas within a matter of hours. All of these different elements, the uninspiring lineup, the looming prospect of divisive political lectures, the struggling movie market, the stalled momentum, and the...
Okay, the only strong, like, the Captain America movies have a political undertone, and then obviously Falcon and the Winter Soldier had a political undertone. What? I get annoyed because I feel like everything's political anymore. I guess they're talking about Captain Marvel being political because it was definitely like a pro-feminism movie, which, like, those are, like, I don't think it pulled those aspects well. But if you look at what they were trying for, like the whole gaslighting thing with Carol and stuff, I really appreciate what they're trying for with Captain Marvel. It doesn't work. But I appreciate what they're trying for. They were so close. But is even that political? Probably to these guys. Just, I swear, if it features anything but a white guy, it's political anymore. Just fuck.
And the general lack of any central narrative to drive things forward, all combined.
Yeah, well, Phase 1 didn't even have a strong narrative either. Yeah, you had the Tesseract in Captain America, the First Avenger, but that wasn't even established to be an Infinity Stone. When was that established to be an Infinity Stone? So Loki had it in the Avengers. I don't think it was established to be Infinity Stone then. God, I don't remember. Was it Guardians that established it as an Infinity Stone? Okay, in the comments, remind me. When was the Tesseract established as an Infinity Stone?
Infinity Stones. These stones, it seems, can only be brandished by beings of extraordinary strength.
Because it was just a MacGuffin in the first Avenger. I think obviously Feige had a plan for it, and it was probably always going to be an Infinity Stone, but that's the thing. There wasn't an overriding narrative in the first few movies. It was just, let's introduce the characters, and then we'll weave the stories together. That's all it was. And, like, complaining that they aren't doing that in Phase 4, it's like, they weren't doing that before. Why would you expect them to do that now?
Together to paint a pretty bleak picture for the MCU. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure they'll still have the occasional hit, and I don't see the franchise going away anytime soon, but it really does feel like they hit their creative and financial peak in 2019, and they're unlikely to recapture those glory days ever again.
Yeah, it's unlikely, but it's not impossible. We gotta see what they do. They will get highs again. They will. I mean, it seems like Doctor Strange 2 is doing quite well. Spider-Man 3 was a huge hit for him.
But hey, it was fun while it lasted, I guess. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
I just don't even know what to add to that. That was dumb. Yeah, it was dumb. Like, anytime he went off into, like... Oh yeah, Thor 3 was fun until you realize it stars women characters. The fuck? Why does that matter? That was all cringe. There is so much cringe in that video. And like, if he had just said, hey, there are new characters coming out. I don't know who they are. I'm not really excited. Which I believe was his primary, like, thrust of his video. That's a fine take. I get that. But my counter would be, that's most people's takes for Thor and Iron Man and Captain America back when those came out. That's definitely people's takeaway on Guardians of the Galaxy. And then those movies came out and people got into them. And that's the thing also. Like, you want to say, like, Black Widow wasn't great. Neither was the first Thor. It's fine. But Black Widow was fine. The first Thor was fine. The second Thor was worse than the first Thor. I like the first Iron Man. I like the first Captain America. The Incredible Hulk was nowhere too. I would actually say Thor 2 and the Incredible Hulk are worse than Captain Marvel. Easy. Because the difference being that Captain Marvel went for something cool and kind of didn't quite pull it off. Thor 2 and Incredible Hulk don't even go for that. They just kind of blah. Completely forgettable. But yeah, he's essentially judging Phase 4 as if it should be the next Phase 3. And it was never going to be that. You cannot replicate that high again. You have to let it settle and then rebuild. And that's what Marvel's doing. Will it be as successful as the first 3 phases? Probably not. But will it be successful? Probably. We just have to see how it plays out. And quite frankly, all these guys, all these people freaking out just because women have powerful roles, just because women are finally getting roles in Marvel movies, which for a long time they fucking were just supporting characters. Non-white guys getting roles in Marvel movies. All these guys freaking out about, you know what makes me want to do? It makes me want to tell Marvel and get a hold of Kevin Feige and tell him, hey dude, you know what you need to do? You need to make a Marvel movie. I don't care what it's about. But all the characters in it have to be people of color. They have to be women. They have to be trans. They have to be gay. You need to check off all those boxes just to freak these guys out. Because it's really frustrating listening to them. Because everything's fucking political if it doesn't involve a white guy. And it's like, dude, there are people in the world that aren't white guys. Let it go. Other people can be represented as well. And, it also makes me wonder, hey, maybe they prefer it if there is a movie actually with all white guys. So let's make a superhero movie where that plays out just like your standard superhero movie, like cut and dry Marvel movie, except all the characters will be white guys. So your lead's a white guy. The villain's a white guy. The romantic interest is a white guy. They're all going to be white guys. We'll see how much they like it. And they'll be like, oh, they're being political. No, it's all white guys. This isn't political. That's the only way to be non-political with these people. And it drives me nuts. This is just terrible. Like that's not even a review. It's just like I don't like Marvel Phase 4 because I don't know characters. Well, whoop-de shit. I don't care.
They think order and chaos are somehow opposites and try to control what won't.
I used to fuck guys like you in prison.